good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our UK webinar. I'm Tracy from Relocation Africa. I've been with the company for just over 19 years, and I specialize in South African immigration. And we also offer services in a number of countries in Africa, as well as in other parts of the world like Europe, the UK, USA, etc. And today we are being graced with Antonio Lamb's presence. Welcome, Antonio, and thank you so much for joining us. Just to give you a little insight about Antonio, he's the managing director at a company called Shaw Legal in the UK. Antonio is a qualified solicitor, non-practicing barrister, and an OISC Level 3 accredited immigration advisor who provides bespoke immigration solutions for corporate and private individuals. Antonio specializes in complex investment and business immigration under the UK immigration rules and European Union law. And he also has over 15 years experience, and he has worked in high street and top tier legal 500 law firms. So we have got a lot of expertise here with Antonio. Just to give you a little indication of how the webinar is going to work, it will basically be a very casual, informal chat where I'll be asking Antonio questions, and Antonio will, of course, ask. If anybody has any questions, you are welcome to type your questions in the question bar, or you can even send us questions afterwards, and we will then reply to those questions if we don't get around to doing so during this webinar. So yes, once again, Antonio, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And perhaps, yes, we can hit it off by telling us what the current immigration trends are in the UK.
Well, trends are absolutely, of course, as you can imagine, absolutely weird this year. So I've got some stats and figures, which I don't generally go into, but I actually love these stats and figures because they're so weird this year. We have a general trend, which I think studies are always one of our sort of top or most popular sort of trend that we get within the UK, then followed by workers, and then the rest of them are family-based or other reasons. And now, on top of that, of course, the highlight of the UK generally are visit visas. And as we know, for the last 2 years, that's absolutely out the window. So just to give you a bit of a perspective as well, in 2019, we would welcome travelers into the UK, and I'm talking about like all sorts of travelers from working to visitors and so on and so forth, probably about 11 something million. In any given sort of point in time, and the latest figures are showing 1.4 billion. So you can see sort of like literally a huge drop in travelers that we are seeing. But there are good trends that we're seeing at the moment as the world recovers, and then certainly the UK opens up as well. We're now seeing about 35% of all sort of visas granted in terms of studying in the UK, and these are sort of stats that sort of derive from June this year rather than later on, because we're doing another statistical output later on this year, and then we've got about 21% of the visas granted in the UK for work. We're definitely seeing a small increase from year on year now. In fact, actually, we are not too far apart from 2019. So 2020 was a weird year in terms of the start of 2020 on to sort of June 2021 has been absolutely horrendous because the world has just literally shut. But if we base it on pre-pandemic level, we're not too far away from it in terms of work and studies. And in fact, there is a small increase in terms of studying in the UK, which is quite amazing. Of course, again, visitors absolutely out of the picture, and we are still very slowly recovering at about 1/10 of a rate that we used to see. But of course, from June until now, UK has opened up. A lot of restrictions are gone, and I'm very pleased to say, of course, South Africa, for example, are now able to freely sort of travel to UK without that red list sort of title ahead of them and hotel quarantine. So hopefully we can attract much more visitors and going back to pre-pandemic level. But effectively, the trend has always been study and work in the UK, and certainly work is now increasing at a rapid rate.
So I think you've already answered my next question, which was how has COVID-19 impacted immigration in the UK? But like, as you've said, things have changed drastically, but are slowly picking up. Is there anything else that you can say, with the fact with how COVID-19 has impacted?
Yeah. No, absolutely. As I say, the travel, visit travel, the work travels has always been going to be the hard hit. And as I said earlier, it's 11.1 million in July 2019 compared to 1.4 July 2021. So again, this is something that it's so hard to crawl back. But I think we've learned a lot of lessons as well. HGV drivers, of course, have been on the news around the world, not just the UK, but we seem to be the ones who are most hard hit. A lot of people blame Brexit, for example, but I really see this as more a COVID scenario where this is an ongoing issue, and it's really about the internal structure against, inviting new people into the UK or keeping people in the UK as a result of COVID. A lot of our drivers, for example, have gone back home because it's COVID and we just want to be home. We don't know when it's going to be locked down, and I see that as one of the issues. And so we have this sort of new HGV driver issue that we are seeing now, or the poultry sort of industry that's getting this the issues with that, and so the government's now trying to work hard with a new visa, for example, to attract, thousands of people coming back for these few months so that, we have Christmas effectively, or things are getting normal as we rebuild from the pandemic, because everything's now going live. So I think COVID, not only are people leaving in that sense or staying put, that's really affecting us even for work visas. We have to slow down, and now we're seeing pickup. It's that rapid resumption of life. I guess that's actually hitting us. So COVID in itself slowed down, but now the hit is we need to work a lot quicker, and we need to have a lot of infrastructure that to be honest with you, taken for granted. Now need to really be working on, because we're now seeing some of the flaws and gaps.
And off the back of the COVID-19, I'm quite surprised that, although it's a good thing, that I see the UK is not very strict about being fully vaccinated. Is that depending on the country, or is it all over the world?
I think we see obviously vaccine as we encourage vaccines, of course, especially for those that are visiting and for those that are locally in the UK as well. And I think that's just the sort of not just political, but certainly the health statement that's been pushing out to say, this is the way forward to get away from this pandemic. So I think we are quite not strict, but certainly very conscious about the need for vaccination. We have numerous different rules, of course, on amber countries, red list countries, and green list countries. And depending on which side you're in, or which country placed on that list, you need to either quarantine or do successive testing, pre-arrival testing, so on and so forth. We are moving away from that, or definitely we've moved away from that with the latest changes on the COVID guidelines, in particular for people traveling to the UK. We're certainly looking at vaccination as much more of a prominent sort of pathway as to whether you need to be tested, or you need something called day 2, day 8 test, or quarantine at a hotel, or quarantine or even quarantine altogether. So I think the emphasis has now moved into, are you fully vaccinated with approved vaccines, and from which country you're vaccinated from. And again, I don't think it's a political thing. A lot of people, of course, that I've spoken to, even like some of my colleagues, say, well, this is very political, which country gets vaccinated, and therefore, and I don't think it is. I think it's the general consensus of the reporting system within that country that the government is aware of. Hey, that's how we sort of look at it, and then that's the insight that I feel it should be pushed out a bit more, rather than saying potentially it is. I mean, there's you've probably heard, of course, this huge palaver about the AstraZeneca vaccine, where it was made, and the country that was made still needed to be quarantined, for example, and so on and so forth. But that's all sort of ironed out, and basically say, well, it is about the reporting system, and we're very confident that the all forms of AstraZeneca vaccines are okay, or everything that the European Medicine Association agency that are okay, the US CDC, all of that type of stuff. We've now identified a whole list of how people who are vaccinated can now enter the UK and no longer need to quarantine, for example, or need to do a day 2 test. So very sort of relaxed travel rules now in resuming the lives of travellers.
Yes, okay, that's good. And I think you've already touched on my next question as well. Where I wanted to know, or I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, what are the most popular types of permit or visa categories in the UK? I know you spoke about work permits and study permits, and of course visitors.
Yeah.
Are those the ones that are generally, that most people are applying for?
Definitely. I think for the past 20 years that I've seen so far, I mean, we haven't really gone away from that. I mean, a lot of people talk about the family-based immigration rules, the new BNO visas that we have, for example, or even asylum. We talk about migrants coming to the UK seeking asylum or humanitarian protection. They form a very small part of our immigration system, to be very frank with you. And the most popular type really, to really establish themselves in the UK are work and study in the UK. And I'm quite pleased to say, I'm always quite proud to say that the UK has one of the most holistic immigration programs. Now, there are procedural flaws that I'm not going to really discuss at this point, because it'll probably take me about 4 years just to discuss that. But certainly, I think there are, a very holistic view on how an individual's journey needs to be in the UK, from sponsored visas to non-sponsored visas to allow them to study or work or live in the UK. Now, in terms of the most popular types, I guess, in terms of permit-wise, we have sort of, I guess, the two most popular types of work visas that we've always known, but in different names, and that's a skilled worker visa, which we used to call Tier 2 general visa, or back in the good old days, work permits, and then, of course, the intra-company transfer route. Those are the two most popular ones that we have, because they are designed for companies that are established in the UK that knows that they need talent from overseas, and we always need talent from overseas, to be able to sponsor these workers as long as they meet the skill level, salary level, of course, the English proficiency, to then come to the UK to be able to work and live in the UK. Now, one of the routes, the skilled worker route, potentially also allows an individual to settle in the UK or have permanent residence in the UK, which makes it quite attractive in terms of coming to the UK to work. So it's not a short-term visa, it is designed for a longer path journey. Whilst you have this, I would probably say the second most popular visa in that sense will be the intra-company transfer visa, where, of course, it's really the same principle, but in this instance, it's having overseas business which are linked to the UK business to be able to assign workers over the existing workers from overseas to the UK for a short period of time, or project-based, or up to 5 or 9 years, depending on salary and the job itself. So those are the two most dynamic ones, I would say. But the UK has been improving itself, I feel anyway, with the new point-based system. I have very critical views of it when it first came out, but I'm sort of seeing the reason behind the madness, so to speak. For example, skilled worker route have now, there's a lot of benefits to it. For example, they've lowered the skill level to which skilled workers are required to come to UK. It used to be graduate level, but now it's really what we call the A level, high school graduate level. Basically, we're recognizing that it's not just a sort of the graduate whatever sort of level. It's actually what is the skilled work that's required.
Experience they have, possibly.
Absolutely. Going back, really, I would say going back probably about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, where skills are more important than the sort of archaic method of labeling. Exactly. So that helps a lot, I think. Also, they've gone away with the so-called limits. So there's no more sort of limit as to the number of people that can come to the UK. Absolutely. And I think that helps a lot. It also helps with the fact that there's no more limit in terms of the number of years that you can be in the UK, which means, if you don't want to settle in the UK, you can continuously, extend your visa, which means it's sort of very similar to the sort of US style sort of visa where you can continue to extend, which makes it a bit more welcoming, because the message, as far as I'm concerned, definitely for the last 15 years, people have been saying, UK immigration is really tough. They're not very welcoming as a message. The message is, get out workers. We want local people. Brexit is one of those bad sort of example of bad press anyway, whatever the political reasons or human reason behind it, it just didn't give very good publicity. But the fact of the matter is, by having this new PBS system, a point-based system, and the lowering of the skill, or rather the amendment of the skills and the requirements, or the stringent barriers, it's telling the world and certainly attracting a lot more workers coming to the UK. And hence, I think this is now vastly becoming the most popular one. And a lot of people who would have otherwise gone on the intra-company transfer route is now going to that skilled worker route, because they now have the extra option of continuing to work or potentially selling.
So is my understanding correct that the intra-company would be you working at a company, say for argument's sake in South Africa, and they have a legal entity in the UK, and they're going to assign them there for a specified duration. And I presume also to transfer their skills over to the local employees.
Absolutely, that was the intent. That has always been the intent of the visa, and when we say temporary as well, it is up to 5 years out of a 6-year period, or depending on the salary, it can be 9 years out of a 10-year period. So it's actually quite a long visa.
A company where you can be such a long time in the country.
Absolutely, and of course, there's no limit for skilled worker, but certainly, yeah, it's actually a fairly long time. So it's not a 2-year stint or 1-year stint. Yeah.
And the skilled worker, is that then, is there a list of skilled workers there that there's a special list?
Yeah, so the list is very fast. It used to be a lot smaller. Now it's just reams and reams of pages of skilled workers. So anything that's sort of RQF level 3, effectively, or what we call the RQF level 3, as long as they're skilled, they're listed on the within the immigration rules. It's a whole long list of this. It goes from restaurant manager, so to speak, to chefs, all the way through to your good scientist, to your the CEO of a company. That list is extremely humongous, I would say. So it covers, I would probably say, I wouldn't say 100% of what we need in the UK, but certainly a good majority of the skills that we need in the UK. Of course, for example, HGV drivers are classified as lower skilled, even though, the industry leaders that I've spoken to say, well, actually, it takes a lot of skills to drive a tanker around, and I agree with that because I'm not a good driver myself. So, so I agree, it's very skilled. So I think there are constant, reviews of these lists that needs to be put on. And we also have an extra thing, which is the shortage occupation lists that we have. So, for example, nannies in the UK or care workers in the UK are shortage at the moment. Children carers in the UK are shortage. Architects in the UK, for example, are shortage. So this list constantly again gets reviewed because they are the high priority ones, and then they are the standard sort of skilled workers that can be eligible to come to the UK.
And if somebody was coming to the UK just to do a specific project or training for 2 months or 3 months, what type of visa would they then, or permit would they apply for?
Yeah, that's a catch-22, and I think especially this year we've been answering a lot of those questions because, of course, as you know, we've exited the European Union, and therefore European workers who are who never needed a permit to come to UK now asking those questions. And the answer is not very comforting in the sense that it really depends on what activities you do in the UK. So if it amounts to work, for example, or day-to-day job training, then it will be counted as work, of course, and you will need a work visa. But if it is, normal training, for example, really high-level intra-company training or troubleshooting, for example, or even if you're a manufacturer that's producing goods for a UK company coming to install, for example, you can use a visitor route or avenue to come to the UK. Now, of course, you can't stay for a few months. The idea is it should be, 30-day or less. There are exceptions to the rule, but that's really looked at quite separately. But certainly, the visitor rules, we have they've just clarified some of the manufacturing side of things, for example. But again, we have a vast a list of permissible activities, what we call permissible activities that you can do in the UK, and it's quite clear. But for every traveller, we always say, before you attempt to get a work permit, unless you know that you're working in the UK, it's really, really important and essential, as a matter of fact, to look at, what are you going to do over that period of time that you're going to be in the UK? And those activities will really define what visa that you'll need. But for the most part, visitor rules cover quite a lot, from meetings to getting to know your job in the UK, for example, to go into conferences and so on and so forth.
Okay, that's good. And are there any, age restrictions when it comes to work visas or nationalities that are not welcomed more than others in the UK?
Again, I'm really, really proud to be working in the UK immigration system, because we are so agnostic about age, gender, nationality, whatever. We're quite blinded by this. I think you probably heard the term in the UK, especially. We always, from Prime Minister, they say exactly the same thing. They want the best and the brightest. And they truly mean that. And I would say sometimes the policy doesn't reflect it, but certainly, the best in the process means actually everyone from graduates all the way through to really skilled and experienced people, who are recognized in the field of study. And that's where the holisticness of, I suppose, the UK immigration program comes in. We don't, from Chinese nationals, which are one of the quite a lot of visa holders who are Chinese nationals coming to study, for example, and Indian nationals, of course, throughout to, around the world coming in for work visas and so on and so forth. We really, as long as you have a clean immigration history and you have good character, as criminal history background, and you can do the job effectively, and you're skilled enough, and you meet the criteria, the UK has absolutely no issue. But of course, and that's where, again, as I say, the holisticness of the UK immigration program is vastly important to support this. We have graduate programs, again, the non-sponsored program. We have the graduate route for graduates in the UK who can get a 2 or 3 year visa, depending on whether you graduated from a PhD. If you PhD, you get a 3 year visa to work in the UK without being sponsored. You can work for any employer, for example. And if you're recognized in your field, for example, you're Oscar winner or Emmys winner, or you're a recognized academia or in the science of arts or digital technology, we have the global talent visa, which can support the working life in the UK for this type of individual. They can settle in the UK within 3 years or 5 years, depending on the skill level of them or recognition of them, whether they're talent or promise. We have other support mechanisms, such as the Youth Mobility Scheme, which allows 18 to 30-year-olds to come in, so the younger sort of generation, I guess, because I'm now way past that, so I can say that now. And I'm not sure whether I should be proud, but nonetheless, but they can come into the UK for a maximum of 2 years. If they're in certain countries, from certain countries rather, because they're Commonwealth, or for example, India has just joined the YMS, and they're able to experience life in the UK.
Because years ago they used to have the working holiday visa.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, and so this is a sort of revival of it, and the rules around that are less strict as well, because the working holiday visa used to be you need to work for 12 months at least and holiday for 12 months or whatever may be the case. That has to be that split. We no longer have that, so it's a case of you can holiday if you can afford it, or work. A lot of people choose to work, of course, because that the mentality of people abusing visas. I think it's a lot less, because people have a function now when they come to the UK. I mean, to any country. If I move to South Africa, I don't expect to lounge around. I will need to earn a living, whatever. So I want to get the right visa to do it, for example. So I think that mentality is out, and we're coming into much more practical sort of immigration solutions.
Excellent. Good. And another question: if, say, for argument's sake, I, as a South African citizen, were a skilled worker or wanted to go and study in the UK, would that application be compiled and submitted in the UK, or would I submit it at the British consulate here in South Africa for study or work?
Yeah, if this is I'd say the first time coming into the UK, or you don't have a visa in the UK already, other than visit visa, of course, you will need to apply from outside the UK. So you will apply from your home country or any country to which you have residence rights. That's the sort of general basis around. So you need to get.
And how long does it take?
UK is great. We look at immigration as a service business rather than we grant you visas, which means the general processing times, not family-based but work-based, generally around 15 working days, which is actually pretty quick. So we're looking at around 3 weeks or 3 working weeks in that sense. But as a service, of course, you offer extra perks, which means if you pay a bit more in terms of servicing fees, it could be 5 working days. And in some countries where available, in some categories that are available, you can do it next working day. So for skilled worker, for example, it could be a next working day. Of course, I say this is the aftermath of us all HR professionals and global mobility managers and immigration lawyers pulling their hair out, sorting the rest of it out. But once an applicant or an assignee submits the application, it's actually pretty pain-free, so to speak, and you can almost guess when you can come into the UK. Unlike previously, where we just guessing and say, really seriously, do not book any travels at all, avoid at all costs for that reason. But now that uncertainty is less. Now, I suppose the only thing that's not true in my statement is family-based visas. They are taking a lot longer. They do, even with priority, it will take 50 working days. So the length of time is quite different.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. And then I have another question. We tend to get a lot of people that are trying to get, and specifically in the UK, citizenship through descent, ancestral, etc. Do you get a lot of those inquiries, and do you do a lot of work in that category?
We do a lot of citizenship work, but not necessarily based on ancestry. We do a lot of ancestry work visas, but not necessarily based on the sort of ancestral sort of citizenship by descent or whatever may be the case. Because we deal a lot more with corporate and working clients rather than the private client work. But we do see quite a bit of that. I think the complexity around it, and I've done certainly have done quite a few private cases in my time. And the complexity around it is looking back at the history and proving that history as well. And the ancestral link is always difficult because especially when you have, for example, an ancestry visa, really need to prove your grandparentage, paternal or maternal. Can you get those papers back from 1920s, or at least have a copy of it, and whether or not you can count those if they've left the UK for a long time, even though they're born in the UK, have they actually lived there long enough, and how do you prove that? All of those are not assumptions. You have to provide some form of proof. And as I see, that's where a lot of the problems and time spent in terms of those type of application lies.
And do you find a lot of challenging cases where people say, I want to go work in the UK, I want to go study, but they actually don't qualify, and they're just looking for ways and means to get into the country?
Absolutely, and we probably feel. I mean, from our inquiries sort of that we work on, we do statistics on how many we on board and not on board, and a lot of the non-on boards, let's just say, is not because our pricing or whatever it is. It's actually because they don't qualify. So we're literally looking at about 60% of them that we field out that doesn't sort of qualify into that route, and there are a number of reasons. Not because they just want to try it on, and I don't believe in that. I think, well, maybe some just want to inquire and just see what opportunities are there, which is absolutely fine. I think a lot of them have the misunderstanding or of the immigration rules itself or the requirements itself, because of course the highlight or the headlines, especially if the headlines comes from a friend of a friend who has a friend that's in the UK, for example, will be vastly different from what the actual rules look like. There's a route called sole representative, for example, which is probably about 60% or maybe even 70% of the inquiries that come in. So just for the benefit of the viewers as well, sole representative route is for a business to allow their senior employee from overseas to come to the UK to set up its first subsidiary or branch. Now, that's the headline of the rules. And so everybody with a company or even newsstands would say, I would like to come to UK. I'll use that route. And I'm the founder. I'm the owner. I want to come to UK to expand the business. And they have most of them, I will have to say, run an extremely great business locally. But the rules are a bit deeper than that, and a bit more comprehensive than that. And so we have to look at the business structure itself. We have to look at shareholding. We have to look at whether the individual has an employee-employer relationship with the company, and more importantly, the business plan in the UK. And so when we go down those pathways, a lot of the inquiries or the inquirers that we speak to haven't thought about that yet, because they only heard the headline of it and say, oh, I can send an employee over to UK to set up its first branch. And so they have to go back and really sit down and go back to the whiteboard and say, do I have the financial capability to do that? Do I have the skills to do that? Do I have the skills to send to the UK to do just that? Can I trust the person that I'm sending? So there are a lot of things to look at. Even sometimes companies that we speak to may be very, very big companies, but because of the way national legislation is held. So, for example, in some Asian countries, even some African countries that we work with, it's easier to be a sole proprietor than a limited company because of the reporting structure or tax structure, which means they've ran their business for 40 years as a sole proprietor. And they go, I want to be a sole rep. And you go, well, you can't, because legally you can't, do this as a company structure and so on and so forth. And go, oh, I thought the headline was that. So yeah, we do get quite a bit of that. And of course, you get students who feel the rules coming into UK to study are too tough. For example, the English sort of language test and so on and so forth. Why do I need to hit certain marks to do that? That will ask and say, can we get around this? And the answer is, well, no, it's sort of not that creative in that sense. We really have to hit the mark first, then we can become a bit more creative.
Okay. And tell me one last question. The highly skilled list, is it available somewhere for people to access to see? And how often? So twofold. Where can we trace that list? And how long is that list usually valid for? Is it does it change each year? Or?
No, so it's not like New Zealand, Australia, where they sort of actively publish it. We have a list which gets reviewed. I think the last review was last year or the year before, I can't recall. Just revising because of the new rules are coming in, so we've revised those lists. The list, most of the jobs there stay the same, I have to say, in terms of the skill level. So it's pretty safe. It's within the immigration rules. It's published within the gov.uk website where people can look at. It's called Appendix Skilled Occupations, and they can literally Google it, and the list is there. Of course, right. The misconception is as long as I fit into the skill, I can apply for it. So like a non-immigrant visa, so to speak, or that type of stuff. But it's not. So you do have to have a UK company that holds a sponsorship license that can sponsor you and that hires you because there's a genuine vacancy. And if you fit that skill level, then of course the process goes on. So that's, again, we field a lot of those and say, I fit into the skill, I'm a doctor, and can I just come into UK? The answer is, well, sadly no, but we love you. Sadly no.
I know the feeling. Okay, that's been excellent. I mean, it's been very, very informative. Thank you so much.
No problem. That's my pleasure.
And yeah, it was lovely to have you on. And as I say, the questions were very informative. I'm sure a lot of our attendees will go and look at that critical skills list as well. And just to tell our attendees as well that if you have any questions, you can contact us and we will definitely be in touch and see where we can assist you. If you're interested in immigrating to the UK or going to work in the UK, as Antonia said, it's not just as cut and dry and you fit into a category and you can go. There are quite a few boxes to tick, but obviously we would do an assessment to determine whether there is a chance of going forward and taking the next step. Antonia, do you see if there's any questions? I can't, as we...
So there are a few questions in the chat that I'm going to go through. Okay. One from Marion. It says, is it possible for someone to apply for work permit before they find a job in the UK? Unlike in Zambia, where one needs to secure a job first before they can apply for work permit. I think I sort of answered that question earlier, which is in essence you do. Now again, of course, there are non-sponsored routes that are coming into play, or that are in play or coming into play. So graduate route, for example, a youth mobility scheme, or what we call the government authorized exchange, or if you fit into the global talent route or startup innovator route, you may be able to come into the UK. But if it's a standard, I want to work for a company or because I have a skill, then yeah, you do need to be sponsored before you can come to the UK. So that's that one. And then
I do see the questions now. So I'll read them out and you can answer them. I mean, but you can see, what they're saying, Antonia. So Renee is asking, if a South African goes over to the UK, can their spouse work? Because in South Africa, the legislation does not allow a spouse to work without a special skill or their own application.
Again, that's how UK immigrant is so dynamic in that sense. I always say to those that are sponsored, your spouse or partner, your children have much freer time than you, because the main applicant, the principal applicant, has to follow conditions, including working for the only employer that you work with because you're sponsored by that employer. Dependents, they don't have to follow that. They can work for any employer, they can study. The only thing I think they can't do is professional sports person or doctor and dentist in training. But other than that, you can do whatever the heck you want. You can set up business, you can study.
So that's the spouse. So if my husband's a British citizen, he's working there and I'm married to him for several years and I qualify and I get the spousal visa. Is it called a spousal visa? What is it?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if somebody offers me employment, I can work whilst on the visa I have.
Absolutely, yeah. So the spouse of a British citizen or partner of a British citizen, of course, you treat it like like a normal individual in the UK, resident in the UK without any sort of prejudice at all. You can work freely for any employer. But even if your husband, for example, is South African, let's just say, and holds a work permit, and you are dependent of that work permit holder, you can do any form of work. Except for those that are listed on your card that you can't be professional sports person or coach, for example. But yeah, you have much freer time in that instance. Yeah.
Good. Okay, then a question from Kyra. I'm applying for a family visa for my husband and daughter. I'm a South African citizen living in South Africa with my family. We want to immigrate next year, March. Have I ever started with the application now? If the visa is approved and we have a 30-day vignettes to travel to the UK and collect the visa, may my husband collect my daughter's visa on her behalf? She's 2 years old. Or does she also need to go over and be there in person to collect? Because she's concerned that the visa is approved and the whole family is not ready to go over.
Yeah. So the idea is do not apply too early is what I would suggest. So actually, you now granted a 90-day vignette. Now, subject to COVID rules, since COVID, we have been granting 90-day visa. We, as in the UK, has been granting 90-day entry visa to allow for that time to plan. Now, if that goes over, or if that changes back to 30, and you're not intending to travel, or she's not intending to travel, you need to extend that permit. So you can't simply not activate your visa and pick up your BRP card or your biometric residence permit. So you will need to activate that visa because even if your Kira, if your husband or partner is to collect the BRP, one, there needs to be a consent letter and you need to tell them what it is in advance, but also the post office, which is where the BRP is going to be held, that when you pick it up, they will want to see that the visa is activated, basically the stamp on the passport that entry has been done.
Okay, so but are you saying that if the husband goes over, he can collect the 2-year-old's visa without the 2-year-old being present?
No. So the 2-year-old needs to be in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So they can't just sort of go.
Somebody can't. So even for the child, they cannot collect because activating it is going into the country, I presume.
Absolutely. However, in your situation, I don't know. I mean, that's an entirely separate matter. Feel free to contact, of course, Relocation Africa for further advice. But there may be looking at whether there is British citizen advice sent in this manner. Of course, if you are sent yourself, then you can't pass it on. But there are certain circumstances to which you can.
Okay,
so that's something to look at.
Every situation is different. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then a question from Renee. In some locations around the world, there seems to be a brain gain, New Zealand in brackets, but in others, there seems to be a large brain drain. How is the UK immigration flexing to attract talent?
I think that's where we are trying to be as holistic as we can with our immigration program. I think from graduate programs to student visas, throughout to postgraduate visas, we have it sort of covered. To people who are absolutely the best and the brightest, as I say, the global talent program that we have, or we have the so-called startup and innovator program for the brightest ideas, new ideas coming to UK. We sort of want the entire spectrum of society to be covered, from young to the working age, effectively, and that's the idea of it. So you can call it brain gain as much as a brain drain in that sense, but I think they both complement each other in the fact that if you have that talent and skill, want to retain it. And definitely for the graduates that graduate from the UK, because they are educated in the UK, we want to retain that talent, and hence that's where the gain and the drain comes in at the same time, in mutual benefits, so that we can retain that talent and continue to grow that talent pool.
And you also said your skilled list is not just or not so much educational qualification, if my understanding was correct. They're looking now quite largely at experience, etc. as well.
Absolutely, it's definitely a combination of both. So graduates will obviously have their graduate route where do you have that degree in whatever it is, but definitely for skilled work, it's not just you have to hold that degree. So it's very different from the normal point-based system that you will see. For example, you will have Canada where you get certain points if you have a bachelor's degree. So we've gone away with that. We just basically say, are you skilled? Yeah.
Okay. Now, another question, Renee, is asking what sort of documentation does one need from South Africa to apply for a work permit? Now, I presume it depends on what work permit you're going to apply for, but say for argument's sake, I was going to qualify, there's a list, and I qualify as a skilled worker, and have a sponsor. So I know already what you've said. We have to have a sponsor from a legal entity in the UK to sponsor that work visa. And I presume the general things would be your educational qualifications, your CV, your reference letters. Those are the basic things, and medical checkups and that. But what I wanted to ask is, do you need your South African personal documents like birth certificates, marriage certificates, and must your qualifications be assessed somewhere, things like that?
Yeah, so actually, we are doing away with mandatory documents as much as we can in the UK. Now, there are definitely certain mandatory documents that we need. For example, your passport we will need because, well, we sort of need to have it. And if you have dependents, of course, we need to prove that they are your dependents. For example, birth certificate, marriage certificate. But in terms of the sort of job and skills qualification and all of that type of stuff, the onus is on what we call the sponsor duties. So because every sponsor, as I say, needs to hold a sponsor license in order to employ overseas workers, so to speak. Part of that is the duties to maintain your sponsor license. And so if your job, for example, if I'm hiring a medical doctor or anything, if I hire a business development manager, for example, let's make it a bit simpler. And I say my job, because I review my job as a company, and I think you need an MBA, let's just say that's the case. And you say that, then the applicant ought to have an MBA and you ought to keep it. The Home Office is not going to start digging into whether or not the guy has an MBA or the girl has an MBA. It doesn't really matter. It's a case of if you, as an employer, hold up to your end of the deal because the Home Office trusts you in issuing these permits, and you hold the right stuff and you do the right checks, then you're okay. Of course, the employers are subject to being audited, and so if you do a fib and basically say, the guy doesn't qualify because it's my mum's friend and I'm gonna help him out or help her out, you're going to be caught and you're going to have your license taken away and all of that. So, but for on the onus of the individual, it's actually pretty easy in that sense. So we just really need personal documents. And of course, if the person has criminal records or whatever, maybe they have criminal history, we really need to have the explanation and reasons and the proof of all of that so that we can review. As an immigration lawyer, we will always ask for more because we want to assess to make sure for both the individual and also for the employer's sake that we are on the same term. We are doing everything right in terms of sponsor duty and the individual duty. But if the employer is doing it themselves, really, to be honest, and for the individual themselves, really, the main thing is your passport.
And I've noticed we've had some clients who've gone over to the UK for various reasons because we, as I think you may have mentioned, and for our viewers as well, if you are going to the UK and you do need, if you come from South Africa and you need any South African documents, we can assist you with that in terms of your birth certificates, marriage certificates, police clearances and that. So feel free to contact us about that. But on that note, Antonia, some of my clients have said when they've gone to apply for work visas in the UK, they didn't need to produce a South African police clearance. Is that not a requirement?
That is not a requirement. It's only a requirement for certain jobs.
Okay,
so if you're a teacher, for example, and you deal with children, or if your job requires you to have a DBS check or a police clearance check, for example, then you may need to provide that. For example, some countries require tuberculosis certificates, some don't.
Yes.
So it depends on the job, it depends on the country, mainly because of the job where you will need a police clearance or not. So it depends on the type of application as well. Yeah.
Because in South Africa, for any long-term visa, whether it's a study visa, a work visa, you have to have police clearances from all countries you've lived for longer than 12 months since the age of 18. So that can be quite a challenge. So
absolutely, we have that for some routes. So if you come in as if you're an entrepreneur type class of applicants or investor type class of applicants, you will need that sort of exactly that same sort of requirements as well. Again, it's back down to trust, because our forms are quite comprehensive in that sense, and it does ask you, about terrorism, about extremist organizations, good character. People may lie. We do checks. I know for a fact that there are checks that are in place, and if somebody says something that isn't, it will be barred.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. That's good. So we seem to have answered everybody's questions. And as we just remind our viewers, if you have any more questions, feel free to email us and we'll see how we can assist you. And yes, feel free to contact us anytime if you've thought of something afterwards. And thank you for everybody attending. It was good. I think it was very, very informative. I've learned a lot here today. Thank you so much once again, Antonia. And hopefully we can do this again sometime in the near future.
It'll be my absolute pleasure to do so.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
All right. Great stuff.
Keep well.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.